Payday 2's, well, it's pretty good, isn't it? I've been playing this thing since 2013 and still haven't run out of daft ways of doing so to keep things fresh. But what I'm going to say next might come as a surprise. More than likely, you haven't even played the best version of Payday 2, and neither had I until a few weeks ago. Restoration Mod is a bit special. An absolute beast of a creation, the best part of a decade in the making, with a list of collaborators as long as your arm. It is, in my opinion, Payday 2's greatest ever mod, probably up there with the best mods made for any game when you take a step back to consider. It is a complete overhaul of every single one of Payday 2's core systems, to the point that whilst all the things you love about the original still shine through, the bombastic heists, the iconic characters, and action-heavy gunplay, you are fundamentally not playing Payday 2 as you know it anymore. Restoration Mod is for all intents and purposes its own game, and so the best way I could think to cover it was in a 40-hour plus playthrough set within my usual challenge run format, finding out whether you complete the original campaign within the framework of Payday 2's greatest ever mod. This is Restoration Mod. The first rule of Restoration Mod is that there are no rules of Restoration Mod. This is a true blank check run for me, where I want to experience as much of what the mod has to offer with as fewer limitations as possible. That means all weapons, strategies, skills and perks will be available, although they're all going to function very differently to what we're all used to. At just a glance at the menus, weapons have been recategorized completely with new designations, actual passives, and detailed statistics. Skills have been redesigned around the old framework, meaning the build system is the same, but the actual benefits are better balanced and seem to encourage more streamlined playstyles. Entire mechanical systems like concealment or dodge have also been overhauled, opening up the meta, giving the player more control over the outcome of a heist, while stealth is totally redesigned, with detection now being tracked on a bar that fills up with suspicious actions, making it much more of a sandbox than the rigid mandatory 4-page design we have in the base game. I'm going to be going into way more detail throughout as I discover more about these systems, but I'm generally headed into this with only the bare minimum knowledge required. That in mind, there are a few goals to consider that differ from my usual runs. Obviously, this is a modded playthrough, although I won't be using additional mods to support Restoration Mod. I'll be playing with Crew AI, essentially to allow me to make the occasional mistake and learn, rather than be punished with instant failure, and see just how well implemented they are within the mod, bearing in mind even they've been overhauled. With that safety net in mind, I will be pushing up the difficulty on this one to death sentence once I hit level 100. As I understand, leveling is slightly faster in this mod. That means from level 1 to 79 will be on Mayhem, 80 to 99 will be Death Wish, the usual cap, and then from level 100 I'll be facing down the revised version of Death Sentence to see if I can compete where I generally can't in the vanilla game. Finally, whilst not a rule, I will be attempting to try out as many weapons as possible across this run, as everyone now functions completely differently. You have weapons with innate poison, movement speed passives, and even entirely new functionality. I'll be damned if I hit the White House without experiencing most of these unique effects at least once. That being said, for once ResMod auto resets Yeowonk's save, meaning I don't have to go through the pain of doing so manually, setting us up at level 0 for the start of a Payday career mode challenge run unlike any other. Heading straight into the loud tutorial, bearing in mind the Crew AI are fair game, immediately you will notice a rather visually striking Payday 2. Random times of day means seeing heists at the nightclub in a completely different light, quite literally giving the game an instantly fresh feel. The gunplay is also a little different. I can't entirely put my finger on it, but the AMCAR feels weightier, as if my shots have more behind them than I'm used to. Over on day 2, I discovered that the Civ we need to trade for our lost crewmate is apparently an immortal blood fountain, as the wave seemingly desynced, making me assume I'd softlocked the mod already. That's fortunately not the case, as the assault wave just ended later than I'm used to, clearing this starting heist and dinging level 8. I don't want to spend too much time in the menus here as we move on to the jewelry store, but I at least need to give you some oversight of my thinking around skills. Whilst many of the game's iconic options remain, some have been moved to cost more points or seen rebalancing efforts. For example, Inspire now needs line of sight, a sensible nerf to one of the most meta skills of all time. As this is a solo run, that particular change is unlikely to have much of an impact, but is a great indicator of what to expect across all other skills. For instance, the FAKs I pick up before heading into the first proper heist of this run are capped at a total of 9, and their instant revive feature, when aced, has a 60-second cooldown rather than 20. My perk deck, in case you were wondering, is going to be Sociopath, which is still built around performing close range and melee kills for sustain, but is now tied to a totally revamped melee system. Almost every melee option in the game has unique functionality and a viable stat line, no longer needing a temporary 10x damage boost to take on even the most basic units. Hell, I'm told these things can even headshot now, a total departure from the base game system, and something I'd even encourage the sidetrack guys to consider implementing once they start sinking their teeth into the game's balance. As for Jewelry Store, I was free to get to work with a smash and grab playstyle, using all the extra cable ties ResMod starts us off with to control the civs and secure 7 out of 8 of the bags, whilst the drill worked on the Titan safe. However, whilst I was taking out the Bo Anderson version of security in the back alleys, the civs out by the road finally got through to the cops. One thing I'll note though, even when your stealth bar is filled and loud is guaranteed, it takes an age for them to actually receive the call, meaning the drill had barely a minute left in its timer by the time the beat cops rolled in. The Predator 12 gauge feels really solid in this mod, especially as a low level option, even whilst running into the first of the ResMod specific units that totally changed the flow of combat. This is the Veteran Cop, a ball fella with cloaker dodges and martyrdom gas grenades when killed by anything other than a headshot. This single enemy unit is a microcosm for the kind of mechanical depth we're in for when playing the mod. I also noticed more generally that the cops show greater aggression, pushing my position down the back alley far faster than I'm used to, but my crew AI have also received some nice buffs, being much more proactive and wielding character-specific weapons from the get-go instead of just rocking car 4s. As a result, we were able to push back across the street to complete the first major heist of the run, being rewarded handsomely with XP as the rate of leveling has been massively increased. I've also got to note the new unit voice lines.
Let's fucking go!
I'll be honest, I had a nightmare leveling out volumes for these guys, but they are absolutely hilarious, helping you to organically work out which units you're facing down without needing your HUD to hold your hand. Anyway, after taking far longer than I care to admit, picking out my melee of choice for the next heist, like a kid in a candy shop with a functional system in front of me, I headed into the bank heist with the early makings of a hybrid stealth setup. Stealth didn't last long when the tellers pushed the panic button, speeding up the police response compared to the jewelry store, but I have to say, immediately, I noticed how much they've done to make ECMs more viable in loud. Not only do I have 4 of these things, their feedback period is incredibly powerful, turning the SWAT van turret against these new specials as my magical floating Tanto did more than enough damage to clear the way to an easy victory, grabbing the bonus loot to speed up that leveling process even further. You can tell the first portion of this was recorded before Payday 2's most recent update released. What I will say though is, despite the reduced spawns of the mod, cops are lethal enough to take you down in a few shots, with cover feeling more necessary at this stage than ever before. I also have to point out just how hilarious the cuffs look with the now fixed missing hand bug, seeing as all cloakers in this mod have the capacity to handcuff you with a kick. All the bonus XP was leveling up my perk deck a lot faster than I'm used to, although for the time being I'm sticking with the stealth angle for the diamond store. Here we get to actually see what ResMod has done to stealth in action. As I take down the cam operator, you can see a small increase in my suspicion meter, indicative of killing a guard. Notice though, despite carrying a pager, it doesn't go off, because he was meleeed while still unalerted. This is quite a controversial mechanic amongst the community, especially with the eternal discourse around Silent Assassin. It's tempered here in ResMod because stealth has been redesigned around the mechanic, and you'll see tighter pager restrictions on harder difficulties as a result, although there are still many ways we can abuse this. The guards upstairs are a little harder to take out silently, although even when the pages do go off, they've cut the time to answer these things down by half, meaning stealth is a little less painstaking at times. I think it probably helps the pacing though throughout. With the manager subdued and all 4 guards in the ground, you can see I'm not even halfway to automatic stealth failure. However, unlike in usual Diamond Store runs, I still need to keep my civs in check rather than go all no Russian on them, even when they start climbing on displays, because doing so would still incur a detection penalty even if no one sees. This is solid design, forcing you to actually consider civ casualties, which is not nearly punished enough in the base game, making them a mechanical afterthought to be launched across rooms by the judge. Overall, I like the compromise ResMod is going for, although it feels a little too forgiving from this initial attempt. I'm absolutely able to get away with more than I would usually, leading to a simple first time clear of this heist. Go Bank, on the other hand, is one I'll always refuse to stealth, even with the more accommodating mechanics backing me up, instead putting together my first true loud setup of the run. Skills like Bullseye still seem really important for survivability, whilst my melee of choice, the Claws, have already done a decent job of skewering this guy, uniquely scaling their damage with consecutive hits, which is easily done now I have a skill augmenting its swing speed. My weapon was the VD-12 with slug rounds, a shotgun to augment that close range style, but without much in the way of accuracy, meaning half the time my slugs seem to be coming out at a right angle. This was particularly bad when facing down snipers, the Angels of Death on this heist, who are even deadlier now they won't reveal their location with a red tracer until it's already being trained on your head. They're a little bit slower on the trigger than their unfair vanilla counterparts, but all it takes is a cloak of distraction and you're still dropped in a heartbeat. And believe me, these downs are costly within the framework of this mod, as the down system has been entirely readjusted. Instead of medic bags instantly replenishing your chances to hit the deck, you have to survive assault waves to earn more chances of tasting asphalt. This is a great change, helping to rebalance medic bags and revert them back from being endless down generators, and making any mistake you make that bit more punishing, but not permanent like in Payday 3's release system. With that in mind, I was placed in a damn near fatal situation after entering the escape phase of the heist, down to my final life and struggling up against another new unit, the Titan SWAT. These guys are capable of physically pushing you backwards with their bullets, making them a natural counter to any melee build, a small part in the series of checks and balances that make things feel consistently fair to play, and never too far in the player's favour. Despite this, I survived the sewers to fight through to the next heist, Transport Downtown. This is one of my least favourite armoured transport variants, but with 4 shape charges at my disposal, as is standard in this mod, it was easy enough to blast open the first van and call in Twitch with the escape. The Deimos shotgun feels pretty damn good in this mod, cutting down the initial roadside response, but being pushed back from the drill as soon as I started moving bags to the escape van. What I've noticed is the game really punishes you for trying to force through objectives as you might in standard Payday 2, with the cops being much more active and aggressive, especially along these open sight lines of downtown. For the first time on this modded challenge, I was pushed back into this staircase with no downs remaining, and it's really here that ResMod clicked for me. Holding the angle, scrambling for ammo, and needing to use everything at my disposal to simply make it through one more wave. The catch-all solution of the medic bag robs you of these tense moments in vanilla, and the much tighter ammo economy turns it into a real scramble, something I can't remember experiencing to this extent in many years. I thought the jig was up as I was introduced to yet another new enemy type, Titan Shields, who have the flashbang effect of marshals in addition to an impenetrable shield outside of a few very high caliber weapons. It can be destroyed though, as my crew saved the day on this one, give me one final life to recover the last 3 money bags and escape to the second transport heist. Park is pretty easy normally, especially with what is a revitalized version of the over 9000 saw, tracking uses with its ammo count, which you can actively replenish using ammo drops now, making it a much more viable option for drawn out combat, and of course the key to completing these transport heists quickly. Finally, for this early section of the run, we have the difficulty spike of Train Heist. With 23 bags to lug across one of the most vast maps in the game, it's always tricky both in loud and stealth. But here, I need to touch on where I think stealth might occasionally fail in its more sandbox-orientated approach. I'm running a loud build here, with the pronghorn to counter-snipe and an ICTV equipped, if you can believe that. But because detection speed isn't tied to the mobility stat this loadout tanks, I'm free to make some seriously brazen stealth plays. Yes, you'll get detected much faster once the bar is close to full, but until then, you'll get away with virtually anything. To be clear, I'm not trying to stealth this heist. I'm just not trying to go loud either, answering pages and taking out guards if they spot me, to retain stealth for as long as possible and reduce the risk in loud. This is my standard challenge run strategy, at least when stealth isn't outright banned. But here, that somehow translates into completing 90% of the heist without needing to get my hands particularly dirty. A full set of body bags comes as standard on all setups, making this sort of hybrid approach more viable, but to be honest, half the time I was leaving hostages out in the open, just daring security to pay attention. After a chaotic start, I was still only at 50% total detection, having already secured the turret parts and ready to move on to ammo bags. I know it's only mayhem difficulty and pager numbers do scale in this mod, but I don't feel like I should be getting away with this, securing most of the ammo bags before the civs up on the bridge finally got through to the cops. Even then, because there's a minute between the alert and the cops actually arriving, I'm still free to start moving the final batch to the boat. My gut feeling, although I have no idea how hard this would be to implement, is that security should probably investigate pages more actively, like what happens when you miss them in Payday 3. That way, you'd prevent this sort of almost unintentional area control stealth that doesn't feel entirely fair to pull off relative to the base game's intended difficulty. At least I got some opportunity to test out the sniper for the final few minutes of the heist after forgetting a bag up by the train. Immediately, bearing in mind how tightly controlled the spawn rate is, but also how individually deadly the units are, this felt amazing. Being able to one-shot the SWATs that had been giving me so many problems on earlier transport heists was cathartic, and has pulled me right back on board with ResMod. An entire weapon class that's normally only good due to a broken skill in Graze, excelling in exactly the areas it should. It's especially useful for counter-sniping these Titan snipers with the purple lasers, who function as more proactive surrogates for the tracer-round firing marshals added late on in the base game's update cycle. An easy clear thanks to getting away with so much in stealth, but still plenty of interesting things to take away from the experience. Early game out the way, it's time to spend some of that cash trying out a wider array of weapons. The machine gun category sort of replaces and expands upon the secondary SMG role with some of the most fun to shoot options in the game, while Small Crasher seems like a perfect playground to test out how the usually busted Akimbo DB Grims feel in this version of the game. It's pretty clear the ResMod team got the memo though, because Dragon's Breath's effective range is now non-existent. You've got to really risk life and limb to activate the incendiary effect, meaning although it's still powerful, there's an actual gameplay trade-off. The second trade-off I'm only running into for the first time on this run is the game's performance. We all know Payday 2 has memory issues, and ResMod is such a heavy mass of code, it tends to compound the issue, leading to the first crash of this playthrough. Toning down my textures to medium should mitigate the frequency of future issues, but the occasional crash is simply par for the course with Payday 2 until the sidetrack team starts wrapping their heads around the memory problem. At least the runback is a little cleaner, now I know I need to shove this shotgun down my enemies' throats. Also, you might notice I switched off Vanilla HUD at this point, switching over to the actual ResMod HUD design. I'll miss my damage numbers, but there's something really sleek about this presentation, even if it is a little screen covering at times. Force Doors looks absolutely glorious, even with Payday 2's dirt textures on medium, thanks to this early evening lighting, giving a new sheen even without many changes to its core gameplay loop. I'm testing out the C4 skills on this one, which, a little like base snipers, feel much stronger when you know your kills mean something, and there won't be 5 blokes replacing the ones you just blew up arriving 5 seconds later. Totally overkill in a heist like this one, but something to keep in mind, with that equipment slot being much more interchangeable than usual. It's golden hour on Ukrainian Job, which for once does its best to differentiate from the jewelry store. Still the same old simple to stealth layout, with the added security meaning we need those pageless melee kills. Also, there's bonus loot in the rear of the store, including these hidden diamonds, which require you to locate a keycard to raise up. What this serves to do is actually occupy your attention whilst waiting for drills, which is otherwise a cardinal sin of Payday 2 stealth design in my opinion. ResMod once again building on the obvious drawbacks of the base game. Why Xmas next? 'Twas the season, at least when recording, so we switched it up to the Cavity 9mm, usually an assault rifle in Payday 2, but now, yep, it's a pistol basically. It feels kinda good like this as well. The same can be said of the Claire double barrel, which now feels like it packs the punch worthy of the constant reloads. Also, these unique ResMod melee weapons are really cool, with the Flamberge for example giving me a parry damage passive on the equivalent of Counter-Strike, enabling me to not only absorb cop melee, but also send that damage right back at them. I've not waxed lyrical enough about just how good melee weapons feel in this mod. They're lethal, but obviously risky, whilst also just feeling more functional with the ability to charge and sprint as I showcased on the Dead by Daylight run last October. Another clean Vlad job out of the way. Meltdown ups the ante, although with no limitations on my weapon options, I'm free to again run a sniper secondary, reminding me a good 50% of any challenge run's difficulty seems to be front-loaded into the fact that half the rule sets don't have a good solution against fellas that can one-shot you from anywhere on the map. After the sidetrack team fixed the RNG too, this thing feels excellent, pairing up nicely with the breaker to defend the nukes as we drag them across the courtyard. One thing you will have probably observed at this point is the complete lack of bulldozer threats. These guys are such a problem in this mod, they've been held back to only Death Wish and Death Sentence difficulties, meaning we're spared for this portion of the challenge. Back to the threats I am facing though, after turning these guys into a fine red mist, I was able to deliver the first set of warheads, which by the way we can now mercifully throw a bit further, before nearly getting run off the road on the way back for the second batch. It's rare you catch the SWAT vans in transit, but half a second later and I might have been in serious trouble. After threading the needle though, this one was all but in the bag, heading over to Vlad's second most expansive job in Aftershock. The Grom did the heavy lifting this time, as once again snipers feel sensational to use, picking off key targets whilst my crew AI were firing bodies straight out of the sky with their character specific weapon options. For instance, Bodhi will always rock the platypus unless explicitly told otherwise. The Striker, my secondary, when equipped with the triple AUG buckshot, hits like a truck, although doesn't fire as many pellets, as once again, the ResMod devs aim to turn shotgun ammo types into side grades with unique applications, instead of just mandatory buffing attachments. This one was going swimmingly for everyone, excluding Bodhi, who seems to have learned how to levitate after Starbreeze forgot about his IP. He hasn't yet mastered moving around in this form though, leaving him to be cloaker food and our first casualty of custody on this run. But with the cleaver and its insane swing speed, absolutely chopping up everything at the escape, this was a surefire win for Team Heister. Stealing Xmas was really straightforward, with Saws and C4, which, as I said, can be quite deadly now. We even managed to bring home a green SWAT on the Christmas tree as a gift for Wolf back at the safe house. Believe it or not, with the faster leveling, that brings us on to level 80 and Death Wish about 10 heists quicker than usual, with the ever inconvenient nightclub up first for this difficulty. This is markedly less frustrating under ResMod stealth rules, although it still mostly just consists of sitting and waiting for drills. At some point, one of the drills was spotted, leading to my stealth build again being tested in loud, this time on a difficulty that brings with it dozer spawns, including the seasonal flamethrower snowman dozer, a really aggressive variant with kind of inexplicable damaging hitboxes. However, with ECMs being so much more effective in loud now, my akimbo pistols actually offering built-in poison, although it was far from downless, I'm happy to get Nightclub out of the way, one way or another. That also rounds off the Sociopath perk deck, which now offers an armor and health heal on kill effect that can be sped up with consecutive kills, in addition to the Panic Burst of Showdown, which is a crucial crowd control effect for us over on Watch Dogs. The Molotov is an even more effective tool when it comes to forcing a path out the back of the van, with initial blast providing knockback, and with grenade bags replenishing a full stack with each use. These consumable throwables are already much more viable in general, and this is another change I'd love to see come to vanilla, giving the asset variations a similar use case to the Ordnance bag. I'm also trialing Jokers on this setup now, which are much harder to splash into every build given their increased point cost, but also don't feel quite as mandatory with tighter spawn caps in general. I love the little touch of the cash transaction though when converting them, making it out like we're literally bribing our Jokers on side. An untimely crash put an abrupt end to this attempt, although that just gave us the chance to run things back at night time instead. I really like the Lucille baseball bat having a passive bleed effect. It actually gives it a reason to exist, and the funny ragdolls this mod is offering up continue to bring a smile to my face as this cloaker somehow got himself buried in a car. There's something about the mod not written in its documentation that seems to require these guys to suffer only comical forms of rigor mortis. Nothing to write home about on day 2 though, a simple first time clear, meaning we move on to Firestarter, one of the most heavily overhauled heists in the mod. This goes way beyond the addition of snipers above the control tower with a new zip line to speed up bag moving and restored cover all around the airstrip. Simply a more rounded experience than what we're used to. Day 2 I thought was going to change very little until they locked down the bloody side of the office where I always dragged the loot from, funneling us through the main entrance, bringing entirely new risks. A subtle curveball I really appreciate. But it's day 3 where things go a step further. This is no longer Bank Heist 2.0, this is now a more expansive branch location, with multiple shutters to drill through to make it inside. Once in, the vault itself has been extended, with additional sub-vaults ensuring we still get a cash reward despite the burning of the Mendoza's cash. Another top-tier anime-style dozer death for the Ragdoll collection later, and we were good to go. A super impressive evolution of a true classic from launch Payday. Rats has also had the treatment though, with Hector's jobs clearly receiving a lot of love to explore that untapped potential. The outdoor section of this one has been expanded, with sniper spawns added on the one side that was previously uninhabited, meaning no angle is safe to peek. Although, seeing as we can stack ingredients in this mod, we don't need to take as many risks whilst cooking on day one. One new special enemy type I've yet to spotlight is designed as a counter to holding up though. The Grenadier, who beat Payday 3 to the punch, can deploy tear gas on demand and force us to reposition, which fits the mod's ability to punish you outside of cover, unlike in the third game, where the gas is often little more than a nuisance. Speaking of gas, we can pack our own, easily replenishable nades to control the bottom floor of the expanded meth den, and finish up the cuck to make it out with the bags necessary to trade. ResMod feels made for these sorts of back-to-the-wall scenarios, meaning this is the first time I've enjoyed the cook-off portion of this heist in years, probably? After a pretty uneventful escape section, Day 2 is also architecturally different, with boards connecting the Viper's apartment buildings, making it much easier to traverse the map if things do go loud. No ambush RNG for me, but I couldn't resist stealing back the meth in front of the most nonplussed man I've ever seen. Bloke didn't bat an eyelid until around the 5th Raven slug hit its mark. As usual, it was full speedrun strats on Day 3, even with the C4 code, meaning we clear Hector's vastly improved set of heists without too many roadblocks. Big Oil for the Elephant is next, and ECM rushing is just as viable a strategy as in vanilla for an easy clear of Day 1. The poison effect was shockingly consistent, and even with their truncated durations, 4 ECMs are more than enough to keep the cams at bay and find the address for Day 2. No point stealthing once there though, as we're going loud at some point anyway. Instead, this is a perfect opportunity to showcase yet another unique enemy type, the AoE healing Omnia LPF. Not only do they have a sick design, these fellas can sustain and even overheal cops around them, giving them this purple nanite glow to indicate the additional threat they pose. As individual units, these guys aren't all that threatening, but they're a far better attempt at an ally buffing SWAT type than say Payday 3's FBI assault. Also, the Kusarigama has a lingering chainsaw-like hitbox whilst being charged. This might be one of the most satisfying ways to mow through crowds in the game now, although it doesn't feel entirely fair when paired with a sociopath build, making short work of everything inside the mansion after the surprise arrival of Captain Winters, who will now push your position with his shield squad instead of bunkering down somewhere as far away from the crimes being committed as possible. Fortunately, I had already secured the correct fission engine, but will need to start watching out for Winters and his seasonal brothers on the upcoming heist. Framing Frame is another easy stealth opportunity. Again, I feel it's just too forgiving on all difficulties below death sentence. You can be so callous in your movement and still get away with almost everything. For example, intimidating this guard prevents his pager from going off, meaning I can just get on with what I'm doing before heading back and dealing with him properly in my own time. It just doesn't demand the same urgency or place the same limitations on you, meaning even with my suspicion bar almost full, I was free to rush through an almost empty art gallery for a 4 painting clear. Stealth almost guarantees an uneventful Day 2, although Day 3 was anything but. Going loud in this one always leaves you at the mercy of the cop's ability to switch the power off and force a constant back and forth during the PC hack section. I had more than enough firepower with a HE round stakeout in my hands to fend off most cops, but not whilst also distracted by the power boxes. I've been sleeping on ResMod's explosive ammo by the way. This stuff packs a punch, and given its slug-like effect, you can still seemingly headshot with it, meaning it has all the utility of the base game's version, with a bit of extra lethality to boot. The competence of the crew AI undoubtedly saved the run here, and also massively helps when holding down multiple locations. By the time Captain Autumn invaded this one, a legitimately cloaked cloaker-type enemy who can disable our deployables and needs to be basically echolocated just through his voice lines, we were already most of the way there with the PC. Autumn just kind of wandered into my shotgun too, which is definitely helpful. I'll be keeping the power of the HE rounds in the back of my mind from here on out. The usual throw on Election Day 1 is still the meta as far as I'm concerned when not all in on stealthing, bringing us to the simple bank heist that is breaking ballot. The explosive Isma also gets the job done as an anti-armor option, although I found out the Potato Masher is now an anti-me option, as it has a 5% chance when fully charged to go full Ullapool Caber mode and just demolish everything in the vicinity. A minor, self-inflicted setback all things considered, as this was another straightforward completion. Big Bang proves why stealth is just too easy in this mod, as once again I stumbled into stealthing the first portion of the heist, despite the civs I've tied up being seen on camera. This was helped by getting good time-lock PC RNG, but still feels a little too far in the heist's favour, especially when Loud is so well balanced. I decided to just run through the lasers to guarantee some action on the other side, whilst defending the thermite. In truth though, the cops didn't even get close. The Jocelyn is a beast at seemingly all ranges, despite the appearance of a sniper-wielding Titan bulldozer. Yes, you heard me right, I was mostly able to hold at the choke point next to the rear entrance. Also, the jackpot melee weapon has a small chance to roll a massive crit, which deals major damage and reminds me that they really did think of everything in this mod. With a full crew, I can drag the 4 bags back to the chopper escape with no issue, as they rebalance the favour cost of planning, meaning I can recreate the original trailer on the rooftop for the first time in many years of running either the elevator trick or bus stop escape. With another heist in the bag after barely a scratch, I finally decided it was time to branch out and try some new playstyles. Instead of the heavy ICTV sociopath variant I was running, which was admittedly excellent against shields, I want to try out a crit dodge setup with the suit. You see, dodge has been entirely revamped here. Instead of functioning on a pure percentage chance system for instances of damage to miss, it functions around a certain dodge occurring every time this dodge meter is filled beyond the black bar, which is itself filled passively over time or by taking damage, somewhat similar to the way Sicario augments your dodge in the base game. This means we need to play around armor gating timings and the extended grace period high dodge builds provide to make well-timed pushes from outside of cover, instead of simply hoping luck falls in your direction. First up, to test out this new playstyle and build, we have Hotline Miami Day 1, which looks absolutely glorious in the twilight, actually nailing the Hotline vibe a bit better than its usual nighttime setting does in my opinion. The snipers on this heist are a real problem, especially when they catch you without a dodge charge. But with Akimbo Judges for pure damage and the Thompson for range consistency, I'm at least potent enough to stay competitive on Death Wish, especially now crit damage is on the table. You can really rampage with this setup in Melee too, with the Ice Pick getting bonus headshot damage, making it one of the most satisfying instruments I've wielded up until now. With one final sprint to the DeLorean, Day 1's in the bag, moving on to Day 2, where I quickly find out just how destructive dozes can be against dodge builds. Instead of just having a 50-50 chance to avoid death by Reinfeld, going down is a certainty if caught out without a filled dodge meter. I'm able to right the ship from here though, surviving an assault and recovering a crucial down, whilst just about having enough health to keep forcing the drill repairs even through the fire and flames. The Commissar isn't much of a match up against an Ice Pit headshot, meaning this one is all but in the bag, even securing a little extra party powder to keep funding my newfound weapon testing obsession. Speaking of which, I'm taking the P90 out for a spin over on Hotston Breakout, a heist that does present a step up in difficulty from Hotline Miami, especially seeing as I just hit level 100, meaning this is my first taste of death sentence within the mod. On a cheerier note, at least it's festive out here with Christmas lights brightening up the trudge along the streets of Washington. At a glance, you should be able to quickly ascertain what makes Death Sentence a step up, with more aggressive cop AI and brand new Zealand Titan units packing deadlier weapons. But there are even more subtle changes making things harder in the background. For instance, Grenadier's gas is much more deadly and drains stamina as well as health. Smoke grenades will be deployed more often, impacting visibility, and flashbangs are once again unbreakable, meaning you need to get out of their radius as soon as you hear a beep. What it crucially doesn't do though is inflate cop health, or remove damage drop-off from most units, as it does in vanilla, meaning a greater variety of playstyles feel viable on this difficulty, and you'll have more time to consider how to approach the bullets flying your way without instantly going horizontal. As you can probably tell based on my success across Day 1, it is on aggregate an easier experience than Payday 2's highest vanilla difficulty, but in my eyes, it's also a more fair and enjoyable experience when weighing up the pros and cons. I've been known to be a death sentence masochist in the past, but I have to say, I do enjoy the back and forth of ResMod's hardest difficulty on a more instinctual level. It's somewhat reminiscent of that early Overkill or Death Wish experience that so many of us Payday 2 fans have been chasing since 2014. It also helps I have a pretty decent build backing me up, although on Day 2, the cracks are starting to show, as the panic of a new assault wave halting unit left me in complete disarray. Allow me to introduce you to Captain Spring, one of Winter's brethren who spawns alongside a pair of aggressive medic dozers, packing both a minigun and a set of cluster nades, making him almost impossible to approach from any angle and punishing you for bunkering down too heavily. I may have dealt with him, but had been undoubtedly softened up enough for this snowman dozer to drop me to my knees a couple of minutes later, as those white flames are extra potent on death sentence. From total heist control to on grey screen in a matter of seconds, this third down was a catalyst for yet another absolutely incredible res mod moment. Back against the wall with my crew, running low on ammo in both of my weapons, and surviving by the skin of my teeth and good graces of the katana. The vanilla experience simply can't replicate how good it feels to reach the break in the assault and recover that precious down. I needed it too, after grabbing the server and making a dash for the escape, falling a fourth time but with just enough health in the tank to open up the basement door and flee this first taste of what death sentence has to offer. Holston Revenge doesn't let up either, as the skull dozer spawns left me already counting downs a couple of minutes in. The explosive stakeout is really proving its worth though. Despite shields taking 50% less explosive damage on this difficulty, it acts as a solid counter to a unit that would terrorize my build otherwise. Additionally, ramming people with the pitchfork is extremely satisfying thanks to its super unique charged hitbox, which is yet another inventive but logical melee adaptation at my disposal. HE shotguns also demolish snipers for the most part, meaning the primary threat at this point is Hector, the rat himself, who's a lot tankier than anticipated. Winters also bothered to show up himself for once, making this standoff even more hectic, although he's not the trickiest of the seasonal assault interrupters to repel, even with their explosive resistance on this difficulty. From there, the escape chopper positioned itself in one of the kinder escape locations, meaning this is another death sentence first time clear. But I'd be a fool to fully write off the challenge this mod's highest difficulty has to offer, as the diamond of all things turned out to be my breaking point. This heist is usually quite easy, but when backed into a corner next to the final exhibit, a firing squad of marksmen and dozers were more than enough pressure to drop me into custody for the first time in this run. We turn things around on the clapback, stealthing the first portion of this one, and discovering these new, more powerful stealth units that augment the security spawns on death sentence in the process. With access to only 2 pages on this difficulty, the more forgiving detection system finally plays its part, enabling me to make it inside the Egypt exhibit room where I was felled last time around before things even went loud. The HE Moscone is a fairly unique option in and of itself, giving me a powerful tool against most cop types and across all ranges, pushing back the onslaught at the Diamond exhibit until Winters again emerged to breach the position. At this point, the drill had done its job though, meaning I just need to cap the captain with the assistance of copious Molotov flames and the parrying Psy melee weapon to finally end the assault wave and escape this heist at the second time of asking. That hiccup would have been a dream outcome on Golden Grin though, as this is simply a different beast on Res Mod Death Sentence. Its open gambling halls provide tons of camouflage and cover for the cops, whilst they retain their pinpoint accuracy. Despite holding out in the toilets for longer than I care to admit on attempt 1, it seems Captain Spring died without ending the assault wave, meaning I was left downless and unable to recover them naturally. Unsurprisingly, a stint in custody followed, although the crew were able to hold out long enough to bring me back. With the assault never ending and my teammates scattered across the map, this was a truly doomed endeavour, ending up in custody once more. The run back isn't much better, although this time we managed to kill Spring cleanly. It's a constant tug of war from assault wave to assault wave though. I made it back from one stint on grey screen, but find myself in the same state yet again just minutes later, as I wasn't able to scramble my way down into the vaults after failing to notice the bloody heavy tank of water on my back, weighing me down. A holdout on the stairs ended in tragedy after giving up too much ground and swallowing a shotgun just a few frames before my melee swing connected. With my explosive primary wiping out multiple hostages, the all-girl dream team of Joy, Bonnie and Sydney had quite a lengthy holdout of their own to handle, which was simply impossible up against the might of the Snow Dozer. Attempt 3 was even more catastrophic, as Spring and his cronies turned up the pressure once again, hitting grey screen before the PFD was even halfway done. Once Jacket and Chains found their way into custody, our fate was all but sealed, again retreating to the bathroom for a final stand that enabled me to trade for their freedom, but left me on death's door with way too much blood on my hands to ever dream of escaping custody. Stubborn and determined to not change up the build, I ran it back one final time, actually upping the aggression to pretty good effect. You see, if you sit back and allow spawns to swarm in this mod, you're asking for trouble with relatively high spawn caps. But if you're proactive and aggressive with your positioning, you can trade a couple of downs for greater heist control given the slower spawn speed. Meaning I wasn't just stuck in the lose this time. It probably helps that Captain Spring didn't make an appearance this time, but with more freedom to move around the gambling floor, I was able to keep the BFD chugging without as many interruptions, making our way inside within 14 minutes, and clearing this one with just the dentist loot in tow in half the time I'd spent on just the first attempt at this epic of a heist. That's it for the dentist for the time being, but the struggles of Golden Grin are a wake-up call for the state of my build. It's time to branch out and experiment with more of what this mod has to offer, and thanks to all that bonus XP from the revised leveling system, I have more than enough to try out one perk deck Payday 2 fans have written off as never viable, at least for loud gameplay. From here on in, we're running Yakuza of all things, a deck in the base game that's built around pure movement speed whilst low on health, but here in Res Mod retains the Berserker theming, but with additional massive benefits such as increased dodge, resistance, and with access to probably the least balanced perk in the game, Oni Irezumi, which prevents you from going down once per revive, effectively doubling the number of downs we have whilst running this deck. It's obviously another deck primed for dodge, with even some melee functionality, as that can reset the guaranteed dodge chance, meaning the setup really builds itself, going into skills like Frenzy and Berserker to lean into the low health concept, in addition to the high mobility options in Ghost. The combination of Bullseye and Cleaner on headshot kills is really strong, especially bearing in mind we can headshot with our melee weapon. Unfortunately, I don't get the chance to dive into this new fast-paced playstyle right away, as I have a few stealth gimmies coming up first, starting with the bomb dockyard. Even after having to take out a Civ, the new Res Mod detection rules feel really forgiving on this heist, meaning I move the Moretta without even using a pager, before needing to take out this guy on the loading dock after wandering directly into him. Even with a quarter of the bar filled though, the odds of getting spotted on the boat are slim to none, leading to another simple stealth clearance. I fully intended to go all guns blazing on Scarface Mansion next, but once again, with how forgiving stealth is even for a loud build with a full suite of body bags, I was able to assassinate all the pagerless targets outside the mansion building with my ultra consistent Lion's Roar, before getting incredibly lucky with my objective RNG inside, locating the tape recorder and phone within the same room, which also happened to be the first one I checked. This meant I still had an empty suspicion bar, which I could use to deal with the final line of defense before putting Ernesto Souza to sleep in his chair. A couple of Yayo shuttle runs later, and once again, I've accidentally stealthed a heist. This is probably my greatest criticism of Res Mod. Stealth has some amazing ideas, but on heist without distinct fail states like panic buttons or trip lasers, it's too easy to cheese your way through, showing just how difficult it is to mess with the tight formula vanilla Payday 2 relies upon. I still enjoy it, and there's a certain satisfaction in getting away with murder. I just feel a little dirty going through some of these marathon heists without so much as a scratch. As ever though, Res Mod pulls me back in with its crime spree mode. This is usually a skip over for these challenge runs, but this mod has totally redefined crime spree, turning it into its de facto endgame with adjusted mechanics and dozens of new rebalanced heists in the roster. For instance, this is Watchful Eyes, a totally unique heist that doesn't exist within the base game. Bodhi seems excited at least. Effectively, it's a holdout heist as we push back waves of cops coming for Vlad's cash and drugs alongside a team of his men, which evolves into an objective hunt as we seek out gas canisters to signal the escape. It's straightforward and has slightly limited spawn locations, but I love the concept and was totally blindsided by the addition of a brand new heist within the run. With the increased aggression and movement speed of cops within this mod, Holdout also works that bit better, although as a base level crime spree, this was never going to trouble my death sentence ready setup. Also note that in addition to the 8 spree levels this heist offers, each bag secured adds another, meaning the mod has fixed loot having no functional value within crime spree. For my second heist, I also get to showcase something unique within these challenges, as Breakfast in Tijuana is now on the roster, allowing me to stealth this post-White House heist for what feels like the first time in years. Again, no Titan cams and the unique mechanics of Res Mod stealth make this a little easier than it probably should be, but there's always going to be some fun to be had freeing Almiralisto from his bondage, clearing out the 20-point crime spree requirement of career mode in the process. A 10 out of 10 experience for me, and something I will definitely be going back to explore in the future. That being said, it's finally time to experience this build on Loud Death Sentence over on Counterfeit. Trying to not get distracted by Healer, just standing there menacingly, I kept up stealth for as long as possible before all hell broke loose around the back streets of this California suburb. Self-damage doesn't feel as crucial for this version of Yakuza, with the cops mostly putting me in a decent hit point range on their own accord, but of course, thanks to the overpowered get-out-of-jail-free card this deck offers, we can always attain maximum Zerk without much real cost. The lion's roar feels excellent, as most rifles have so far, although it's the pocket sniper that is the RNG2 that really ties the setup together, feeling so much better after Sidetrack fixed it and giving me an option up against most shield units. To be honest, this build seems to have everything in terms of damage and survivability, even packing ECM jammers for some additional crowd control, bearing in mind there's no point running healing on a Yakuza setup. I might switch over to ammo bags later, but for now, this feels genuinely infallible, making the sewer escape look like a walk in the park. Hell, with its high mobility, this build is even ideal for stealth, as we again see why making things like cameras spotting you not an instant fail state might be a little too forgiving. Cameras in general are hardly an issue in this mod, bearing in mind I can take down the guard operating them without ever needing to spend a pager, meaning that's no longer a decision I need to weigh up when playing this heist. Huge fan of this guy's barrel roll into surrender maneuver though. If that half of the heist looked easy, just wait until you see the vault, where I flatten security's presence without even needing to answer a radio, moving the loot without interruption. Lacking the zip ties for the civs in the offices, I did end up with enough blood on my hands to max out the suspicion meter, but even if that eventually calls the cops, I still have plenty of time to complete this heist without fear of any actual resistance. More of the same over on Murky Station, although at least this time it's a stealth-only heist and I need to approach it this way. After dealing with the security patrols down the basement, this one's all but clear. I do need to gag this guy after some clumsy movement caught me out, but since his patrol path is miles away from everyone else's, I can just leave him tied up whilst completing the rest of the heist without a pager going off. Boiling point next, where I make the mistake of trying out the AM car with its mod-exclusive Rambo attachment. This thing turns it into an uncontrollable bullet hose that forces you to move half as fast when shooting, totally contrary to how Yakuza wants to be played. When not drawing bullet-shaped silhouettes around the SWATs, I'm able to appreciate the cool designs of these Spetsnaz additions with their clear riot shields and totally unique bulldozer variants. I've also got to point out these ultra-sneaky camouflage Titan cloakers who turn off the EMP while literally invisible. These unique gameplay moments you could never experience in vanilla Payday 2 are more frequent than you might imagine at first glance. Down in the labs, things are also not quite as you're used to, with new flamethrower units and some of the hardcore Henrys actively fighting back despite the EMP, which feels like a nice bit of world building for this heist. Combat down here is relatively straightforward though, scanning a single patient and grabbing the server with the hidden keycard. The escape is still tricky, although this cloaker actually came to my rescue by dropping me right as I was about to go down naturally, saving the down and opening a path to the ice field for escape. The mod also seems to have toned down the myriad of snipers covering our exit, although the Arons still had to get a few reps in to clear the way forward and secure the server. Moving on, spawns on Santa's workshop feel immensely intense as I switched over to the regular AM car, which actually doesn't suck in this mod. My survivability's certainly challenged though, actually hitting grey screen for the first time since I switched builds, but with the insurance policy of Oni Irozumi doing enough to keep me afloat for a quick getaway from one of the easiest heists remaining in the run. Car shop ain't too bad either, especially with that improved multi-civ moving, meaning the manager doesn't just immediately do a 360 and then stand perfectly still for the next 10 seconds when trying to move him out of line of sight. The hog-tied civs were eventually found, but far too late to prevent my getaway in one of the Kknowleys. Up next, let's see if this wonderful mod can save the tragedy that is the biker heist. I'm switching between ARs fairly regularly at this point, they all mostly fit into mobility builds, so I enjoy the variety quite a lot. You can see just how good Yakuza is here in case you were wondering. Being able to get away from certain death once per down is something that used to be saved exclusively for Leech, but here we are getting a perfect Zert for free. I can confirm I wasn't expecting the bunker containing a bike seat to be this heavily guarded, bumping into the overkill MC Dozer variant for the first time, but thanks to it also doubling as an armory, I had the firepower to push back, securing the second part and progressing to the final holdout at the garage. I also caught the manifestation of Starbreeze in its natural habitat after launching Payday 3, shadowboxing in the club heist while all hell's breaking loose outside. Keep it up, champ, this year's gonna be your year. Anyway, moving on to the final objective, with most spawns funneling from the front side of the building, making it relatively easy to keep the mechanic covered long enough to finish up the bike and set up for escape. I'm not sure what he did to overtune this thing, but I swear it never used to glow like this, or drive fast enough to do a full daredevil loop of the tunnel ceiling. As metal as that was, I did get lodged sideways immediately after landing, but this time wriggled my way free to crawl onto day 2. This was a simple sprint along the train though, with the biker boss struggling to tank up a bloodthirst charged El Verdugo swing, grabbing the BCI helmet and using my ECM jammer to convert the SWAT van turret to my side briefly and cover the escape. Moving on to some classics, my old nemesis Panic Room isn't what it used to be. I've switched over to the Vector for its better close range damage to control the tight corridors of this heist, but Chavez and his Gangster Heavy are both fodder for my butterfly knife of all things, which yes, gains a 4x backstab boost, comboing with Cleaner and offering up some really fun trick stab moments across this heist. Again, being able to run and charge makes even the clunkiest melee options feel amazing, and the spy roleplay even more distinct than during my specific TF2 run. This might be my favourite build so far, with a few dozers also falling to these strafing strategies. The sniper killing section's a little hectic, especially bearing in mind the main staircase of the roof has been cut off in this mod, meaning we need to skirt around the fire escape stairs to even make it up. The Aaron again comes in handy here though, clearing the overlooking roofs only for Bile to chuck the C4 straight off the side. If this is vanilla RNG, I'm not sure I've seen it before in my thousands of hours playing this game, forcing us down to the ground level for multiple trips. Sending off the explosives also triggers a 20-minute point of no return, adding weight to this idea that the building is on the verge of collapse and forcing me to actually engage on the roof instead of hiding out in some side room and waiting for it all to blow over. Not to mention the ambush that plays out during the escape. With multiple dozers barring the exit and no bloodthirst stacks, this turns into a bit of a mad scramble as we just barely make it through, escaping another massively enhanced mission when compared to the vanilla experience. I'm gonna miss this mod when back on the usual challenge grind if I'm being honest. Moving on to Brooklyn 1010 and equipping the AUG for this one, a rifle that handles like a dream within the framework of ResMod. I also appreciate that even tiny details like the spawn locations of fixed assets have been adjusted, meaning ammo and medic bags are saved for the final holdout at the escape, instead of being off limits the second you leap to the adjacent building. I'm still not completely sold on the claws in this build, especially up against dozers, but I can't deny how good it feels going all Wolverine up against a large group and rapidly scaling that melee damage. We made it to the street level downless before I clipped a lamppost with my explosive judge and deleted the sliver of health bar I had left. Self-inflicted accidents are a small price to pay for this monster's damage output and utility though, feeling like it should probably be the de facto mobility option for any sort of dodge or crit build. It's just as well too, as it felt like we were stuck holding out the escape for an age before the van burst through the parked cars, rolling that rare 10% odds heist variant. Stealth again next as we head to the yacht heist, except this time with even more freedom to get away with just about anything, shanking this guy and simply tossing him overboard with barely any repercussions. This of course makes it even easier to simply intimidate the two guards down the server room to freely complete the final objective and escape yet another stealth heist without jumping through too many hoops. Heading over to Undercover now, where the sky's gone unreasonably dark, presenting us with unusual lighting to do combat by. The JP36 feels alright, although undoubtedly less impressive than many of the other rifle options I've tried out. Thankfully, with snipers hitting a bit of a wall against dodge builds, even the rooftop holdout went without a hitch. The problem arose when, back inside the apartment block, screaming in the taxman's ear for codes for far longer than I can remember doing in the past. I simply need a better option against dozers as the claws are not cutting it, and the tinnitus effect from tanking a dozer melee swing on the cranium is not sustainable for me to keep hearing. I was dropped on a total of 4 separate occasions by the big guys on this heist, which if you remember how Yakuza works in this mod, might as well have been 8 times all things being even. The build was still good enough, when paired with the passive down recovery of clearing waves to make it through this one, but I'm going to need to adapt for one of the highest hurdles for any challenge run in Slaughterhouse. My plan's to switch to a higher DPS option to try to break through dozer faceplates faster, going with the Miyaka SMG to up my effectiveness at close range. Truthfully, I think using the HE Judge would have been my best bet, but I still wanted something scoped for when dealing with the snipers at the escape. Still, the build was just about hanging in there on what has to be the most intense heist of the run so far. This gameplay is hopefully showcasing everything I adore about this mod. These murky water cops just feel that bit more aggressive and certainly swarm the initial stage of the heist, forcing me to dart to and from cover and even locate a keycard to close this entrance and slow down the spawns next to the armoured transport. The gunplay has an ebb and flow that I don't think you'll always get in the base game. There are simply more moments worth recounting, which might explain why this video is so long already. If you think that was a tense gunfight though, just wait until we force our way out to the shipping yard, with Captain Spring rocking up at the same time as I was already surrounded on all sides with red lasers. These sniper doses in particular are a fresh challenge to consider and leave us scrambling to stay afloat. I don't think it gets any better than this. Holding out with my actual functional but fallible crew, backs against the wall whilst all manner of things are blowing up, smoking me out and burning my retinas. I love this game, and boy does this mod bring that adoration to the forefront. Making it to the end of the wave is almost always an immense relief, a feeling I wish I could bottle up. Although doses continue to terrorise my build, a tactical retreat to the meat plant is all I need to recover, mount a final charge to the escape for another, admittedly sloppy first time clear. Moving on to the lock jobs, we start off with Beneath the Mountain, where even the initial assault on the compound feels intense for once. Again, the ECM jammers seemingly cluttering up my equipment slot came in clutch once more, not only giving me respite against the roof turrets, but also interrupting the mercs inside whilst I cut open the fences. One enemy type I haven't mentioned much but deserves some spotlight is the Taser, who feels a lot more like its Payday the Heist counterpart, zapping you faster and from longer distances whilst also fatally downing you in just a few seconds. It's punishing, especially as they won't auto-reload your weapons anymore, but not without its own counterplay. Also, you can see just how manic things can get when you allow a Titan Cloaker to get amongst your crew, as I found myself swinging in paranoia more than anything else, attempting to stop him from cuffing my entire squad. For as much as the mod challenges you though, certainly gives back to the player, with more room for C4 in your inventory, mean you don't need to make 2 trips when blowing up radars on the roof. It wasn't always pretty, with these new Space Helmet Payday the Heist dozer variants still giving me trouble, but thanks to the safety net of the crew, we're free to take off towards Birth of Sky. Those dozers can't keep getting away with being my build's antagonists, so I'm sadly going to have to retire the Aaron after this one. The judge is just too damn good to ignore. However, for once, the ambush up on the plane is not something we can just run past. With SWATs being much hotter in their pursuit and dodge requiring me to actually pick up kills, we're forced to fight and apparently die, as all 3 of my crewmates were shredded to pieces and I was soon to follow. Taking it slowly on the runback seemed to be the play though, this time landing down on terra firma, again to wrap up some money bundles. The AK-5 feels decent in this mod, doing work across most ranges, meaning the judge was exclusively saved for shields and dozers. However, bearing in mind crew AI kills don't drop ammo, hence why the solo ammo economy is so comparatively tight, without what amounts to effectively endless ammo generators on your side, we ended up getting heavily bogged down around the diner right as the sewers opened up and the SWAT vans rolled in. With Ethan only having eyes for Hoxton, and Sokol not really making any effort to help us out at all, the 3 of us were bound for custody, leading to a swift heist restart after Sokol managed to get even more lost and decided to challenge a SWAT van to a 1v1. Third time's the charm though, as we breezed through the first 2 pallets deathless before resistance again mounted next to the final one, this time on the more easily defensible gas station side of the map though. Not getting peppered by turrets this time around meant I could head up to the roof and secure the final money bundle before looping around the map to enter the sewers. Here we're met with a far easier tunnel escape section, with ECM feedback stunning most of the ambush and only 1 dozer to deal with, rather than the platoon of school dozers that normally greets us. Easy enough to clear when I can shell-shot these guys with the HE Judge. Once gateside, with reduced spawns, this escape is nothing more than a formality, a massive relief, after properly providing the stiffest death sentence challenge so far. Heat Street can be just as tough at times, but looks trivial when you consider just how good Yakuza is for surviving the initial sprint to the crash site. Once there and burning the van, I was able to ambush the cops landing from choppers before they had their bearings, dealing that 4 times backstab damage with the butterfly knife whilst they're still abseiling down. Once sufficiently roasted, Matt feels much easier to escort, as I'm fairly certain his stopping ranges have been increased, meaning you don't need to sniff his ass to keep him moving. The fixed cop spawns as we push him up to the final road showcase just how busted the judge is against dozers, smashing their faceplates with just a couple of shots, which might take an entire magazine to break otherwise. And with the landing zone virtually abandoned by the time we got there, this heist lacked the usual crescendo the designers were aiming for, flying out with lives to spare. I love how atmospheric Green Bridge feels within this mod, capturing the grit and grime of the original with just a few tweaks to the lighting. I'm also pleasantly surprised at the functional range of the signature SMG, meaning snipers barely had a chance to slide their doors open before hurtling towards the Hudson. Kazuo was fortunately in the first van we opened, saving a ton of time and energy during the escort section. Resistance was still stiff though, with multiple dozers landing in atop the scaffolding. Hell, one even ziplined his way over in a display of astronomical upper body strength. The judge is simply too strong though, dealing with all comers in addition to the chopper mounted turrets circling our position. They still push me to the dregs of my ammo supply next to the balloon airlift though, forcing me to display the utility of my new favourite melee option in the entire game. The nail gun is a beast and should be implemented exactly like this in the base game. With a melee range of roughly 5 meters, this thing is effectively a third weapon slot, dealing headshot damage while scaling with melee skills. I love it and will be trying to fit it into most builds from here on in, assuming my mobility allows. Stapling guides to walls will never not be satisfying. With the final drilling section next to the escape removed, the pacing on this heist remains high octane right up to the final staircase, with the dozer ambush feeling a little less like a dice roll than what I've gotten used to, sprinting away from my pursuers for another first time completion. The betrayal on Alaskan Deal was met with grenades and a nail gun, clearing out the hardest part of the heist in under a minute. I did overplay a couple of times at the escape, with Nader's gas grenades functioning as one of the few counters to Yakuza, which generally relies on staying just barely conscious, as it can easily tick through the suit and take that final sliver. I was never in much danger of entering custody during the boat assault though. The classic diamond heist is another sort of stealth itself. I've realised that the pageless domination mechanic is actually a relic of released Payday 2, but can absolutely see why it didn't hang around for long. Does anyone else remember just tying up every god on Frame Day 3 and getting a free run at the place? The problem is, it makes spamming the F key the default response to ever being spotted, and so long as that guard is out of other patrol paths, there's basically no punishment for leaving them kneeling there for all eternity. If you get caught out in the open as I have here, it's not as much of a catch-all solution, but with 4 ECMs still in my back pocket, I'm effectively already home free with the diamonds at this point for another low chaos heist. Corvo would be proud. Day 2 of Reservoir Dogs is seldom a challenge at this stage in any run, but here in particular it's an absolute breeze, finding the correct garage instantly and waiting out Twitch's arrival for another downless day. Day 1 is where the difficulty lies, especially during the initial ambush, but again, I have the firepower to counter almost anything thrown my way by now. Embarrassing confession though, I had no idea you could turn off the power before getting shocked by the vault on this one. I've always assumed you need to zap yourself first if you rolled this RNG, but apparently not. Learning new things every day, such as how much easier it is when you can hold multiple objective items at once, making the solo experience much smoother, and in this case, saving me from having to shuttle the liquid nitrogen back and forth to the vault. With the sniper population under control, the bag moving process was exceptionally smooth, sprinting down to the escape van without any more roadblocks on this one. Yet again, this mod surprises me though, as I stumble across the Sabre, a ResMod exclusive rifle equipped with a rangefinder and perfect fit for my build. A damn satisfying weapon to shoot, earning itself a call-up for Brooklyn Bank, where it dominated most mid to long range encounters. Another highlight of the mod I almost missed. The medallion didn't take long to secure, opening up yet another simple escape to take us onto the home straight. If I've learned anything from this run, it's that stealth is fairly easy, such that even a trip to the notorious break-in feds is hardly a problem. Without trip lasers to keep security marked, I wasn't able to execute the usual strategy, so instead just killed the lads, bearing in mind I can do so with hardly any repercussions. Despite Garrett positioning himself in the least convenient location possible whilst disabling security to his office, and then proceeding to fail to remember the right code 2 times in a row, this one still wasn't in much doubt. Hell, I even accidentally ended up using a third pager, which does come at the cost of a large chunk of suspicion, but again, since it doesn't sound the alarm immediately, I'm able to sneak on by a third time and secure the elephant's coffer to escape this one at the first time of asking. Another potential nightmare trivialized by ResMod's highly forgiving stealth. For one final time on this run, I feel I've earned a Kusarigama heist. I actually stopped using these Beyblades after seeing how OP they seem to be all the way back on Big Oil, but for a slog like Henry's Rock, I think I'm allowed to pull out all the stops. They're more than enough to repel murky water when concocting the poison brew to open up the first coffer in the biolab, and although I was eventually caught out in the weapons lab, going down for a first time on this heist, that was actually after I'd secured the loot required to move to the escape. Turns out the escape is coming to me though, as just about every unit set to ambushes outside decide to instead rush straight down the tunnel and into the blender. With ECM jammers, the anti-air defences were easy to temporarily convert, meaning all that was left to wait out the final assault. After spinning to win on a few final fellas back at the escape, Bile arrived for one of the simplest escapes so far, and a heist that's often unrelenting at this stage of the run. To celebrate, I purchased the golden AK for a massive 12 million bucks, the most expensive weapon in the game, and actually not too shabby an option for this build. As ever on Shacklethorn Auction, we can do most of the prep before things go loud, but here the game is even more liberal with the time it grants us before the first assault wave hits. Fortunately, they do make up for lost time, absolutely swarming us next to the vault and forcing me to the ground again, but not before I'd opened up the obsidian plate and was ready to call in bile. With more resources remaining than I know what to do with, Shacklethorn's always going to end up in an uncontested win, although it was certainly one of the more hectic heists so far. The same is true of Hell's Island, where it seems certain objectives such as unlocking Bane's prison door have been extended, unless that's just the death sentence difference I'm experiencing. This means the combat section is more pronounced, and you can feel the creeping jeopardy as the control room is swarmed on 3 sides. Of course, it's at the final trudge for the escape chopper where Hell's Island really earns its salary, with this kill gauntlet always offering a unique challenge, as we need to be proactive and shed enough blood to move Locke along once more. By the time we reach the final gate hack, it really was backs against the wall stuff, with the nail gun again doing its share of the heavy lifting before the point of no return kicked in. Not for the first time, it seems Locke dropped Bane somewhere and was miming his fireman's carry, but since we're not going for the secret ending, I suppose that's an acceptable loss. If you do want to see me not only beat the secret, but also do so in record time, I strongly recommend you check out the video linked on screen right now, as it's one of the coolest challenge concepts I've ran in a very long time. Moving on now though, to the penultimate heist. No Mercy is a mess, as ever. I spent the first 5 minutes trying to play doctor, only for the guard on the stairs to spot a cowering civilian totally out of bounds, forcing me to go back and saw all the doors open anyway. The problem is, I don't have any drill skills, meaning these are all max duration drills, and with my newly found Teddy Moo hatred, I'm not sure I can handle 10 plus minutes of that little shit wiggling around. Naturally, the correct patient was in the final room I opened up, meaning by the time I started drawing infected blood, the entire hospital was covered in cop detritus, and my poor laptop was chugging along in that 20 FPS range. That in mind, the main way I'm going down at this point is by blowing myself up with the HE judge, whenever Ethan thinks it's a good idea to stroll in front of me shooting it. That really is the only downside of this absolute powerhouse of a weapon though, which seems to be even more impactful than its highly meta base game variant, whilst also offering shockingly good ammo sustain, thanks to which I was able to keep racking up the body count and start painting the walls with bodies in addition to the floor. I've got to say, if I'm going to critique anything about ResMod, I'm not too keen on the unbreakable flashbangs on death sentence. They're just a little too common to not have direct counterplay, and the yellow glow of the unbreakable ones actually a little hard to spot than usual. I get the idea if the mod wants to keep you on the move, but I found myself starting to be grateful for all the bodies on the floor to help catch a stray flashbang from time to time. Actually being able to see things is fortunately optional for this particular build, with its almost anarchist-like iframe abilities, meaning yet again another heist falls to the mighty Yakuza, and we can move on to the final challenge of this run, the White House. Now, as you probably guessed, with this being ResMod stealth, this could be highly anticlimactic, as I rump my way through the West Wing, either dominating every guard or giving them the nail gun treatment to comfortably get my hands on the keycard for the POC without even needing to answer a pager. The same trick is entirely possible even when inside, just catching security off guard and facing no real repercussions to the integrity of stealth. But in a rare moment of clarity, I decided to taste the glory of loud ResMod gameplay one final time before ending this run. The dinner bell that is the HE judge rang out to make sure of that, giving me waves of mercs to shoot at to close this challenge out with a bang, rather than the whimper we were sleepwalking towards. This final build is undoubtedly the strongest I've had at my disposal throughout the entire run, virtually spawn killing the cops down in the POC before offering the same hospitality to the units that try to interrupt the escape out in front of the White House. I'll never get over just how satisfying it is to pop those glass helmets in this mod, tearing through the dregs of murky water before Locke arrived to put an end to this run once and for all. Probably the best 40 hours of Payday 2 I've experienced since the glory days of old. I cannot stress enough just how good ResMod is. This is the skeleton of the final build I was rocking to finish up this challenge for those of you interested in trying out something similar. I honestly can't recommend this experience any more fervently. What you're seeing on screen right now are the rolling credits for the creation of this Goliath of a Payday overhaul. I want to give a massive thank you to each name you see on screen right now. Together, they've created a masterpiece that all Payday fans on PC should experience at some point. For all the minor niggles I have with regarding difficulty, especially in relation to the adjusted balance of stealth, I have dozens of immensely memorable moments I'll be recounting to friends for years to come. Keep in mind, it also won't impact your personal save file within the base game, as it saves separately, meaning it may as well be an entirely new Payday game right there at your fingertips, entirely for free. It has been a pleasure playing it like this, and I'd recommend anyone else looking to try it out for the first time, solo, to follow a similar career mode path. The progression experience is heavily smoothed out, meaning you'll rapidly get a chance to experience all the builds you might be interested in trying out, so it's ideal. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I did recording it. A genuine pleasure on my part. In a world where the Payday community seems as splintered and divided as I can recollect, this creation has revitalized my passion for the franchise. A masterpiece, all things considered. Take care, check out the description for the mod link if you're interested in trying out, in addition to, of course, my Apex Gaming PCs if you're in the market for a new Payday playing machine, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.